And welcome back to welcome to the second hour of our program. Forget Hunter Biden. Where are the investigations into Ivanka and Jared profiting from their time in the White House? Asks my SiriusXM colleague, Dean Obeidallah. He's the host of the Dean Obeidallah program or show here, right here on SiriusXM channel 127, SiriusXM Progress channel. He also has a great newsletter. You can find it at deanobeidallah.substack.com, the Dean's Report. Dean, welcome back to the program. So why haven't the DOJ investigated Ivanka and Jared, and why should we care?
We should care. First of all, Tom, thanks for having me on, and thanks for being on my show last night in our Home and Home series that we keep doing. Look, everyone should be asking questions about Ivanka Trump. I wrote articles when she was in the White House there working for her dad, because Crew, which is a not-for-profit, nonpartisan ethics watchdog, was filing complaints, begging DOJ to investigate what was going on, because there's Donald Trump having the president of China at Mar-a-Lago, entertaining him, and literally that same day, Ivanka Trump's company gets 3 trademarks from China. This happens over and over and over, and the reason I write about it now is because the investigation into Hunter Biden by James Comer, the House Oversight Committee chair, is predicated on the idea that these people who worked at proximity to the president were profiting off their connections. And they're talking about Vice President then Biden and his son Hunter Biden. I go, well, if you're looking for people cashing in on their ties to the president, bingo, we got Hunter Biden, we have Jared Kushner, and we have Ivanka. Ivanka happened in the White House and Jared was outside. It's laughable. It's just corruption right in front of us, and nothing's been done to either. There's been no real investigation.
Right, and then they got $2 billion for their efforts, apparently, and now Daddy is building a massive hotel in Oman that he's probably going to make $1 billion off of. Sure. Not to mention the Live Golf Tour, which I think is just another, a brand new way of laundering money to Donald Trump. But
right.
Are there any laws against this, Dean? You're an attorney.
Tom, are there laws? Yes, there are laws. Are they going to ever be enforced? No, because the world we live in, sadly enough, where, this DOJ is not going to get involved in looking back at potential ethics violations or conflict of interest violations that I wrote about in my article today. For example, the allegation by Crew, the not-for-profit ethics group, that in 2018, she violated 18 U.S. Code Section 208 for working on a project, Opportunity Zones, that her husband, Jared, owned property in, and he was going to make money from the real estate end of it. And there was no investigation. They referred to the DOJ. It was under Barr's control then. Of course, nothing happened. What you pointed out to Jared Kushner in Saudi Arabia, even Chris Christie, 2 weeks ago, kicking off his campaign in New Hampshire, said the grift of Jared and Ivanka, in a word, he called it breathtaking. Yeah. He goes, do you think Jared Kushner got $2 billion because he's a good investor? No. And what happened there? Jared Kushner was the #1 defender of MBS, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, and Saudi in his time in the White House. It was all documented during the time in the White House by the New York Times. He defended MBS against the conclusions by our intelligence that MBS was the one that ordered the killing of Jamal Khashoggi. And he was the biggest defender. And what happens? 6 months after Jared Kushner leaves the White House, he gets $2 billion from Saudi, from their sovereign wealth fund. $2 billion. It was a newly formed equity fund. And even MBS's own financial advisors told him, don't do this deal. It's a brand new company. We don't know anything about it. It's not a good idea. MBS overruled his own financial advisors to give Jared Kushner $2 billion. It was clearly quid pro quo. And even at the time, House Democrats controlled the Oversight Committee, and Carolyn Maloney began an investigation last June, which of course died when Republicans took control of the House. So that's where we are. We have rapid grift and corruption right in front of our eyes, and nothing's being done.
Why do you think it is that Democrats in the United States Senate have, we control one of the 2 legislative bodies of Congress. The Senate committees have subpoena power. Chuck Schumer could create a special committee to look into graft and corruption by, in the Trump administration. Or it could be done by, the Judiciary Committee, or there's several committees actually that this, under whose purview this could easily fall. Why do you think it is that Democrats just, never go out of their way to hold Republicans accountable? And Republicans are like hysterically manufacturing. Jim Jordan now, the Judiciary Committee, he's literally issuing subpoenas to researchers on misinformation and Republican lies, and threatening them with jail if they don't respond fast enough.
Well, look, Democrats, during the time Trump was in the White House, I had members of Congress on my show, like you do all the time. And I asked them about the whole thing with Ivanka Trump. Then I go, why don't you investigate this? You have, at the time they had the Oversight Committee. And there was a lot of reasons why. And they didn't want to seem, my sense was, and they didn't say this verbatim, my sense was they didn't want to seem petty. They want to be like, okay, you bring up Hunter Biden, so we're going to investigate Ivanka Trump. That was my sense. I will say again, Carol Maloney, who was then chair of the Oversight Committee in 2022, did begin at least sending a letter to Jared Kushner and begin arguably opening an investigation, which he said the appearance of a quid pro quo for your foreign policy work during the Trump administration to Jared Kushner. But then they were able to delay it and nothing happens. Why don't some Democrats? I think members of the Senate think they're above this stuff. They view this as the House squabbles. Mm-hmm. But in reality, you're protecting our own institutions. No one should be able to profit off being in the White House. They worked there. Hunter Biden had no connection, never worked in the White House for President Biden. Jared and Ivanka worked there. They had their own portfolios of power. They ran around the world making deals under the name of the United States of America. And in return, she got trademark deals while President Trump was negotiating trade deals with Japan and China. They're giving his daughter trademarks, literally in the exact same window. That's what triggered all these ethics complaints. And then with Jared, it's clearly quid pro quo. The guy doesn't have a good track record. He's not a good investor.
He's a slumlord.
$2 billion.
I mean, that's what he did in his life. He was a friggin' slumlord.
Right in front of us. And I don't bring it up myself to do, they're bringing up Hunter Biden. I do it because the Oversight Committee is saying, James Comer saying, we have to investigate Hunter Biden because, look, he profited off his dad being vice president. Right. Well, you've got Jared profiting from dealing with our foreign policy and selling us out. The defense of MBS was off the charts. There's no reason for that. And Ivanka, she may not have asked for the benefits, but her company got these trademarks and they're worth money. And from China and Japan, not just China, but Japan as well. It's ridiculous. We have to either have a system of justice that says no one's above it, and we're going to go after even the kids, we're going to cross that red line, or it's a free-for-all, let's be a third world country. So I'm disappointed when Democrats don't step up their game on these issues.
Me
I have
too.
to be honest.
Me too. Whatever happened to the Hatch Act? I mean, you had Ivanka pitching beans in the White House. You had Kellyanne Conway violating the Hatch Act. You had Donald Trump. Now, this was during the pandemic. I suppose, you could cut him some slack on that, but holding Republican events at the White House, those are all violations, clear violations of a very explicit law, the Hatch Act, which prohibits any politician from using government property for campaign purposes or to make money.
And again, Crew filed a complaint against Ivanka when she was in the White House for violating the Hatch Act. It's a toothless act. We know that. I mean, they just talked about it with Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House press secretary. And sometimes it's inadvertent. But what Team Trump, the grifters, were doing was literally like using our property, our tax dollars, to make themselves more money now. And you mentioned the deal that Trump just announced, we just learned from the New York Times today, in Oman, O-M-A-N, not Amman, Jordan, a country of Oman, which I've been to. It's beautiful. A lot of beautiful beaches. I can see where Trump's going to make tons of money. It's a very welcoming country. And this is all for sale. This is unreal. And when Republicans are asked about Jared and Ivanka, they don't need to defend it because they'll just switch gears quickly and the media doesn't follow up. Right. But you're right. It is Democrats in the Senate who have control of the ones who should. They don't make this a priority. They're trying to hold Justice Thomas and Justice Alito to some standards of ethics, and they're on the court right now. I mean, another day, another Supreme Court ethics violation going on, as we learned today from ProPublica with Justice Alito.
Yeah.
What a time.
We just had Greg Palast on about that. It's an amazing story. It's an absolutely amazing story. Get over to Substack.com and look for Dean Obeidallah's newsletter, The Dean's Report. I have that right, Dean? I don't.
Exactly. The Dean's Report on Substack.
On the one printed out in front of me here. It just says deanobeidallah.substack.com. Check it out. It's great. It's really worth subscribing to. Dean, thanks a lot for dropping by.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for having me.
Great talking with you. We'll be back. Stick around.